Here we go.
Here we go.
Maybe
We're trying not to laugh. We're trying to keep a straight face. We had a funny
indeed.
Yeah, I
conversation.
have to. Yes, I have to keep my
Okay.
face
So
straight.
everybody be serious now. Okay.
Right. Okay. Good morning. Good morning and hello to everybody. Thank you very much for joining our podcast this Wednesday morning. Today, once again, we are going to stream a pre recorded podcast because we're trying to accommodate our guest speakers' schedule today. And once again, we have a guest speaker who is with us for the first time. Her name is Makiko Kuramoto, as you can see on the screen. And I want to say just a few words about her before we give her the screen. I'm not saying the podium, but the screen. So, well, if you're not connected on LinkedIn, then you probably don't know that Makiko has a PhD degree in psychology. She's founder and managing director of Fumi Consulting. And she's also a specialist in interpersonal relations, intercultural communication, and organizational improvement. She does coaching as well, if you're not familiar with her. And also, she is a university lecturer at Keio and Aoyama Gaku in universities. So, welcome, Makiko, and thank you very much for being with us, for sparing time to be on the podcast. And of course, before we dive into the conversation today, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. The first one of them is Kanachu. They are very well known in the area of Yokohama. Kanachu.com is also the other name they go by there. You can connect with them by connecting with James Howell or also going to their website at kanachu.com. Kanachu.com or Kanachu is based in Yokohama once again, and they do buying and selling real estate in the area. They do real estate investment and property management. So they can talk with you in either English or Japanese, so the language barrier is not there. If you have any projects in mind, please reach out to James. You can find him on LinkedIn or you can send him an email. And now we are back to Makiko, our guest speaker, and well, the screen and the word is yours.
Yeah. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, but Maya already explained everything about me, so I don't know what to add. Well, I'm specialized. Yeah. If you hear psychology is really diverse, and there's criminal, social, but I specialize in developmental psychology, cultural psychology, and organizational psychology. And I used to be a program manager at the French industry in automotive industry. So I'm kind of combining cultural, psychological theories and the professional experiences to help companies and individuals. And yeah, like you said, I also teach psychology at universities.
Right. To me, psychology is an area that is not overly popular, but still it is one of the most important areas of and aspects of life, also science. So, how come you specialize in psychology?
Well, I had a mental crush when I was adolescent. I wanted to explore more about myself and how mind works. And that's why I decided to pursue a BA in psychology in Canada. And after that, I joined this French company and I married a Frenchman. So my husband is French. And we are raising two children who are double, French and Japanese. And I learned that this intercultural children suffer a lot, and that sometimes they are torn apart between two messages. So I wanted to give hand to those children, but in order to help children, I need to help parents. In order to help parents, I need to understand better. So that's why I went to grad school to do a research on intercultural parenting in Japan.
I see. So the research is on intercultural parenting here. So it is really specific. And right, I don't know whether you are happy with me asking you about the main points of the research or maybe the findings you did there. So what were the main findings really that came out of the research?
Sure. There are so many things to say, but if I get to choose one, whatever the identity, let's say you are born in Japanese father and American mom, for example, but whatever the identity, American or Japanese or bicultural or whatever, or cosmopolitan, there are several patterns to identify yourself. But you can be still happy whatever identity you choose. But the most critical factor to make to say that they're happy is that you have a safety base, which is their parents. The parents are the safety base, and they embrace every experience and struggle that children go through, and they provide opportunities and environment that they can explore and adventure. So so that's the way. And so that parents don't put the railway, okay, I have to identify with this specific cultural identity or nothing. Parents are not imposing, they are giving freedom, and
Mhm.
they're always there to support children. So that was the main finding, I would say.
Wow, yes. Well, thank you very much for that because I think that a lot of, also in my experience, a lot of parents also struggle with actually finding a way, to support their children here. Because every parent, being such, they love their children, they want to support them. But sometimes for the parents themselves, when they're foreigners living in Japan and working here, it's difficult to find a ground that is stable, that they feel is stable ground below, under their feet.
Mm.
And maybe that is one of the reasons why such parents, by no mistake of their own, I want to say, but they also have difficulty becoming the safe, how can I say it, a safe haven for their children, to provide a strong support for them.
Yeah.
And then what can parents do then? Because I believe that we need to start with the adults, because the adults are those who can search for things and who can try to correct their own behavior to a certain extent.
I think it's one thing is also to learn from each other, and don't impose your way to the other. And there are a lot of books on intercultural parenting. So I think as a parent, you have to get knowledge to study about each culture, and also a basic child raising as well. I don't think you have to read hundreds of parenting, but I think the book that you can feel relate to, I think it's important to study. And also don't fight in front of children, because the children are really watching.
I
Yes.
completely, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep a united front and your disagreements behind. We always did that. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
really good point.
Yeah. And whenever I see my husband, let's say for example, behaving in front of my children, not in the way I like, I
Right.
stay calm, say nothing, and when my kids go to bed, okay, I have a talk, I have a word with you.
That's
you know,
exactly what my wife does to me.
yeah,
That's way behind us, but you're a little
yes,
bit too hard on the kids, Tim. You better back off, stuff like
yeah,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, yeah, and I try not to, really impose or fight. And I say, try to understand. Can I understand why you did that? Then maybe our discussion doesn't have to be necessarily a fight.
Right,
Just
right, right,
right
right. A negotiation.
negotiation. Sometimes we get emotional, but once because why we are talking here, because what do we want? Because why we are having this conversation is to make sure our kids are happy. So we have a common goal. So once we go back to a common goal, so we can always talk constructively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife and I were surprisingly aligned, but we talked about it before we got married. But I was here for 7 years, so I knew what questions to ask, and sometimes if you're here and you're a non-Japanese, you at least have the opportunity, you can see the culture that your wife is from, right? Most of the people I dealt with were American men in the US who had either never been here or didn't understand the language or the culture. So they had a different issue. Like they didn't really understand where their wife was coming from. So I think having at least basic aligned values at the beginning give you a foundation,
Mm,
and there will be differences,
mm,
And so I'll give you an example. So from American standards, my dad was a little bit old school. So he was really into discipline. And by American standards, many, at least my generation, Japanese were lacking in discipline for the younger children. They just let them run wild. But they were all very indulgent. I don't mean it as a criticism. I'm just saying from that point of view, that's what it looked like, right? And my wife and I were more closer to the middle. I didn't want to be a hard ass like my dad was, but we still wanted to discipline our kids. We didn't, we never hit them or anything like that, but we wanted to give them direct feedback. But sometimes I would go a little bit too much my way and she would reel me in, so it was a negotiation and it worked out. It was better, so I really appreciate that. There's almost a yin yang thing going, but you got to communicate. Right?
Yes, you have to communicate. Yeah, it's not. Sometimes people misunderstand it's a winning or lose. It's not. Sometimes we just step back and pause and ask questions.
Right.
Instead of saying your opinions, just ask.
Yeah.
Why you did that, and then just trying to understand. Then you can say your opinion. That's what we did. I think because between Japanese and Japanese, or between American, Russian, there's always a conflict. And when it comes to intercultural, the problem, the conflict is kind of amplified. So that's why, it's harder for us, I think, to kind of negotiate, to navigate through this marriage, I think.
Yeah, because of the work I'm in, because of my field, I was always talking about intercultural stuff like at home with my wife, because my wife was one of my resources. Having a Japanese native person to bounce ideas off of and to say, oh, yeah, I want to explain this. Is my Japanese funny? Can you fix it? So there was always talk about that. So my kids were exposed to it. But as you mentioned, we talked the other day, one of the positive things that well-adjusted kids had going for them were parents that were positive about the cultures, right? And we were positive. We didn't pretend there were no negatives, but we were both, we showed that we admired both cultures, and we exposed our kids. Regular trips to Japan, finding Japanese friends. This is in Chicago. They had lots of Japanese friends there. So we made an effort intentionally because we wanted them to be bilingual and thought that it would serve them well in the long run to be raised bilingual. I didn't start until I was in my 20s, and I saw how hard it is to learn a language when you're not a native speaker. I didn't want my kids to have to go through that. So my wife only spoke Japanese. I only spoke English. And if they interrupted us, it depends who they were interrupting. If it was me, it would be in English. Of course, my wife would be in Japanese, right? But they were, and I learned in a linguistic class that if you separate the language, the kids won't be confused.
Yes.
But if you mix them up all the time, so we were pretty disciplined, so there was a concerted, positive effort. And I've seen this, I'm sure it's with you too, but I've seen the same with Maya as well. And so I think that point that you made kind of resonated.
Yeah, I really think that what you said earlier, that presenting the two cultures in a positive light is very important, because I have also noticed, once again, from observations and experience here, acquaintances in Japan and so on, that sometimes the parents themselves are not so much in love with the local culture, right?
Yeah.
And so they make comments in front of the children about the negatives, how difficult some things are here. And of course, there are always difficulties everywhere, not only in Japan, but inevitably, it creates questions and conflicts within the child's thinking, right? And at the end of the day, in the long term, this is not productive. This is not a good way to actually create a rounded bicultural human being.
Yeah, for sure. I fully agree, Maya, because the children internalize, the values from parents. They think they own it. So that's why whenever we say negative thing about one culture, the children get to naturally reject that culture. So
Mhm.
my husband and I make sure we don't say anything negative about our cultures.
Yeah, yeah.
We have certain opinions, but we don't express it in front of children because I want my children to have, they have their own right to, develop whatever values and thinking, but it shouldn't be developed by parents.
Right, yeah, and I love that too because I remember when my daughter was born. So some of my friends here, friends from Bulgaria, they would say, "Why don't you teach her this, or why don't you tell her that, or teach her this?" And I was like, my style is more laid back. So and not only with children, but with most everybody, I just observe most of the time, and whenever necessary make some clarifications and this and that. But obviously this style did not sit well with some of my friends back then, and so I had to explain myself, and even when I explained myself, it was still difficult for them to understand that it was not a bad way to
Mm.
to raise a child, right? A bicultural child.
Maya, that's so funny because our problem with our in-laws on both sides, my family thought I was too loose,
Yeah,
and her family thought we were too strict.
right.
And we were trying to, get in the middle somewhere, a nice happy medium, right? Um, yeah. So, I, yeah, I can see that. You also talk about again, Makiko, you and Maya, both of you. Your kids are in Japan, and I think
Yeah,
that's the focus because there's a big difference between Japan context and the U.S. context,
right.
right? Because
Mhm.
both my children are mixed, right? And it was easy for me, and this is a little bit my old school side. I always said, look, there are mean people in the world. They're going to call you names. They're going to say crappy stuff about you. Don't seek validation from them. You're lucky you are. You're very valuable who you are. You have an advantage because you're bilingual. Be proud of that. I mean, that was the message.
Yes.
And of course, I think we should all validate people. I get it. But you can't control whether people validate you.
Mm.
Right.
It's out
Yeah.
of your control. All you can do is control how you think, right?
Yes.
And but that's easy to say in the US. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Because in the US, it's like people didn't care. Yeah, there were people who would say stuff, but it wasn't like Japan where if you have Caucasian features, but you're mixed, you're going to face those pressures in a different way.
Yes.
There's
Mhm.
other pressures in the US, but not in that way, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
So, in that sense, I felt like my job was easier because I'm
Mhm.
US. What are some of the challenges that, excuse me, happened with you guys in Japan?
You want to start with? You want to start, Maya?
Maya?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some of the challenges.
Yeah.
Well, I know that some people might think that I live in my own bubble, and love, or my own pink balloon. But it's so basically the challenge for me has been to teach my daughter Bulgarian because I just don't speak Bulgarian with anybody, right? And at home, in the beginning we used English, now we use Japanese, and that has been the biggest challenge for me. But I am not worried actually too much about this because I think that if my daughter wants to learn the language, eventually she will, right? When she thinks that she really wants to do that. And I'm perfectly fine with her finding her own pace. That's not a problem at all for me. But also, there are some funny stories, I have seen them and I have heard them, and maybe I have shared some of them before. But for example, when my daughter was going to Hoikuen, and so we would alternate, taking her there depending on the day, me and my husband. And so one day he came back home and he was in pretty good mood. And when I asked, okay, so what happened? He said, well, I took, our daughter to the Hoikuen, and there were just a couple of kids there. Not everybody was there yet. And when I kissed her on the cheek, kissed her goodbye, so one of the boys looked at us and said, "No kissing!" Shouted at me. And so, so I think that we come from a culture, basically in Bulgaria, we kiss, we hug, and this and that. So that's what our daughter is used to. So for her, it was just a normal thing to be kissed goodbye. But the other kids around, they were like, "No way!" So
Yeah.
thankfully, I think she
That
never
was
actually, yeah,
funny. Yeah.
it is funny, but she
Yeah.
never actually shared with us that somebody told her a bad word afterwards or not. So she was just happy being there with her friends. But such things happen, tiny, tiny things. And you see them, how they are expressed, how people and my daughter's friends react to them, to these slight differences. Yeah, Makiko, maybe you have better examples.
No. There's no. I don't know. There's so many. For example, when it comes to my kids, I don't know. First of all, the first challenge is language. Because at the beginning, like Chin, you did, like you did, we are stick to our own language. So I spoke only Japanese with children, my kids. I have two daughters, 16 and 12. My husband only spoke French. No, they were replying to my husband in Japanese, but my husband kept saying, "No, I don't understand. I don't understand." Yes. So there was a moment that kids started to kind of reject. My husband was kind of disappointed, but anyway, he doesn't understand one word of Japanese. So he kept saying, "I don't know." So eventually my children gave up and started to kind of speak to him in French. But now they are going to French school, so they are really fluent. But at the beginning, they were kind of mixing, Japanese or French. And one funny example, in French, they say tampon for stamp.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes.
To a stationery goods store. So my daughter said, she was 5 years old, "I need my tampon."
Oh no.
Yes, you're ready. Yes, I'm ready for that. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. And also we say sashay is for look for and
Right.
go see someone. Mukai niku, same meaning. So she was like, let's go search for dad, as if he was missing,
Right.
Go see the station. He's not missing. This kind of thing I needed to really teach them really patiently, what to say in Japanese, what not to say, and so on. And another one is discipline, because sometimes the French way, they can be very direct when it comes to parenting. And when my daughter did bad stuff and he was like, "Oh, Kwan," move the kids to the corner, like a timeout, like in the US, you do it, right?
Right.
Timeout. And we don't really do that in Japan. I felt too strict. But again, I kept it to myself. Okay, I make sure 5 hours later, I'm going to remind him and talk to him.
Yes.
And then when I asked him why you did that, because that's common in France. Then he said, okay, actually, I'm not really comfortable, seeing kids crying in a corner. So can we do in a different way? So we talk it out. So instead of, Okwan, we say, just, let them, give them a space to think about. It doesn't have to be a corner, whatever, in their room or living room. So just give them space to think about, but never in a corner. So that's why we kind of reach to a mutual agreement.
Okay. I guess that we did a hybrid version of that. And this is when my kids were really little, okay? And my older son was the troublemaker. My younger one was actually pretty good because he saw Big Brother getting in trouble. So he laid low, he chilled. But my wife would, we'd say, "Go to your room. Oheya ni ikinasai. Hansei shinasai." So we'd go in the room and he'd close there because we never hit him, He'd close the door and he'd be in there crying, and then we'd wait a little bit, and then Kurumi would say, "Hansei, stop." Like he knows what Hansei means, right? But the conditioning was beginning, And,
Yeah.
and on kind of a related note, though, one
Mm.
time I was a kind of a troublemaker when I was a kid. And when I would get in trouble, my parents, we call it, they would ground me. So they would not allow me to go outside. So what they were doing is they were denying me freedom,
Mm.
right? That's the punishment. My wife said, when I was a naughty girl, my mother would push me outside and lock the door, and I was begging to get back in.
Mm.
The opposite. And I said, God, I wish I had your mom. That would have worked out great, you know. But opposite techniques were being used to punish the child, but they were just denying the child of something they valued.
All
And my
right.
wife valued belonging, and I valued freedom, right? So I thought it was just an interesting contrast in our upbringings, how
Yeah.
we were disciplined. But
Yeah.
so, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it is.
Mm.
Yeah. I nowadays get sometimes some of the words, Japanese words I use, the more complicated ones or complex ones. Sometimes I use them in the opposite. I put the kanjis in the opposite order and the syllables, of course.
Yeah.
Like, shakai and
The
kaishi.
jukugo, or yeah.
Yes, Jukugo or Gojuku, or this is a mistake clearly. And then my daughter comes laughing at me and she says, "No, no, 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 mom, that's the other way around." So we have come to the point when she has that confidence that she can teach me Japanese when I'm mistaken, which is also very sweet. I find it very sweet and very helpful.
My wife corrects me by repeating what I said in the correct way.
Oh, nice. I never
She just
get
repeats
that
what I tried to
from.
say, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I knew that. You know, I knew
You are
that.
not annoyed, Tim?
Huh?
You're not annoyed? Because when I do that to my husband, he always gets annoyed.
No, because she doesn't do it like in a bad way. It's
Yeah.
just she's helpful because she taught me so much Japanese. When we
Mm,
married, I could speak it, but I went from being able to speak it to giving 8-hour seminars in Japanese. And I had to work through it myself. And then she helped me speak better Japanese to explain things in an easy to understand way. So she was been my Japanese teacher from
Mm.
the start. We always speak Japanese at home. So I'm
yeah,
used to it.
that's
She's
sweet.
so
Yeah.
that would say, oh, Tim-san, Nihongo jozu desu. I go, "Kibishi sensei
Yeah,
imasu
you have a
node."
huge respect to.
非常に厳しい先生いますよ。
Yeah, I wish I had that sensei at home because whenever I ask, okay, which is the right one? And the answer I get is, So, right? And so, which of these two versions is the right one? Which is the correct one? And the answer is usually, So I never get, if my daughter is not there. So from my husband, there is not really much of a teaching. And because I think that, we're beyond that maybe, but that's how things are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
But,
the one thing I had to learn that didn't work well cross culturally is the American smartass sense of humor, like a little bit sarcasm. Japanese has its own flavor of sarcasm, but it's not like American sarcasm.
yeah. Mm,
In America, if you really like somebody, you tease them, you playfully tease them. And if they start teasing you, then you're in. Like that's kind of at least my generation, right?
Right.
She didn't like teasing. That was like Ijiwaru, and I'm like, I'm just
Mm.
kidding, you know.
Mm.
And I've talked to many international couples, and lots of people say the same thing.
yeah, yeah.
So I had to learn to back off on the smartass sarcasm, you know. And so I asked my wife, I go, like, can you give me an example of Japanese style sarcasm? And she said, yeah, somebody might say, Uchi no Ojo-sama wa. And but and if you think about that, it's sarcasm, but it's directed at your own family. So in a sense, it's self-deprecating because the family's the unit, and you kind of put your family down just
Yeah.
because you're putting yourself down. It's part of the game in Japan, right? So I thought that was an interesting, like, oh, that's to them, you're not attacking someone else outside your group. It's your own. You're making fun of your own daughter or something. So Right. That was a challenge.
Right, right, right. I agree. I think we tease each other, but can I say there's a certain borderlines,
Yeah,
and
right.
we cross unconsciously, and
Sometimes I cross it.
yeah, then we see the other person's face, and oh my God,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
on the bomb. So sorry, I didn't mean bad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but what are some of the ways? Because inevitably, when we come from different cultures, and I would say, if we go deep, deep, deep into this, even people coming from two different parts of the same country or coming from two different families, they experience these
Yeah,
cultural gaps, let's say, right?
yeah.
And then, so what are some of the ways we can just get over them without being annoyed, without being upset? What can we do?
There are a few things from my study as well as my own experience. One thing I would say, we say we have to respect each other, right? But I think it's not enough. There's something beyond respect. Because respect is like sometimes you are drawing a line, like you're creating distance, like a polite wall. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for example, I'm Japanese. I like eating rice, and sometimes I eat a grilled fish in the morning. But my husband is French, and he eats only cereal, which I hate. But he finds eating fish disgusting. That's respect. I don't. It's okay. But when it comes to parenting, it's a totally different story because that's our kids. So
Yeah.
sometimes our discipline way of teaching sometimes crashes. So that's why instead of imposing, we have to be curious. Why that in France? Why that in French? And Japanese. And so again, like I said in the beginning, it's not winning or lose. So we have the common goal. So we have to be curious, open-minded, but not offensive. So that's first thing. And also having some basic knowledge, because um, sometimes when it comes to conflict or when you encounter confusion, sometimes knowing cultural background, there's a certain patterns that Japanese people tend to behave in certain situation. Having that knowledge may help you, figure out how to, get out of the way. So I think having some knowledge is helpful. Having said having said that, and another thing I would say is don't reduce people to categories. As soon as you see someone as French, American, Bulgarian, and you see someone as category, but
Mm,
what who stands in front of you is just a pure human being, just like you. So that's why um, uh, just ready to accept feedback and opinion, no matter whether it may not align with yours, but stay open, be curious, and try to understand. Yes, and ask, I will say, ask a lot of questions. Let
mm,
also let them ask questions about you.
You have
And
to ask questions forever. I'm
yeah,
41 years in and I'm still asking questions every
yeah,
day.
yes,
It's an ongoing dance, the art
mhm.
dance of communication, I mean, it doesn't end.
yes, it's never ending. Yeah, it's a never ending journey. And also, I will say, don't take it personally. Sometimes people, seem cold. Japanese people may seem cold or distant, but it's not. We have a lot of emotions, but we are just imprinted not to show it. We have a lot of things going on. So just don't take it as a face value, and don't take it personally. Maybe it's a cultural thing, or just to, don't overreact. And I remember the benefit of the doubt team. I really
Yeah.
I'm a believer of that. When someone says things or do things that you don't like, but just assume the best. Maybe they are good intentions. Don't look at things through your own lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, or my friends used to say, assume the best and ask questions.
Mm.
And like you've said many times, Mike, be curious. You have to genuinely be curious. And to your point about sometimes Japanese seem cold, I felt that with Japanese women in general. But I've been married for a long time, and my wife, Japanese aren't into say "I love you" and Like that's not a big thing. And they will say it if you say it to them, they know you want to hear it, but that's not really how they're wired. But in the case of my wife, it's her love language is action. She'll just do things for me, but she doesn't really verbalize it the way my family, my everybody I know in my country does. And I think if you look at what in my mind, I'm just saying, okay, look at her behavior. I'm gonna interpret that as her way of saying I love you. She does all this stuff for me, right? And to me, that's how I framed it in my mind.
Mm.
You know, so it wasn't a compromise. I just had to get used to it,
Mm.
right? And it's great. In fact, I think action. I've come to be more Japanese. Like talk is cheap. Just you show me the action. Do it through action.
Mm.
Whatever.
Mhm.
Mm.
Love people through action, through good actions.
Right.
That's one thing Japan taught me.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, okay. Please allow me before we continue to say thank you to the other sponsor we have, and that is House. So you can find them online at house.co.jp or connect with them through their email, which is webmaster@house.co.jp. The company is based in Yokohama and they do custom home design and construction, also commercial building construction. If you have any projects in mind, well, in these fields, reach out to them. You can speak with them in English or Japanese, it's up to you, and they'll do their best to meet your needs and customize their services to what you have in mind. So, thanks a lot for this. And, well, once again, back to the conversation. So, yeah, I wanted to say actually that when we see the person as a human being, or maybe most of the time, it's very easy to resort to seeing the label, right? And more often than not, when we are in a foreign country, it's much easier to how can I say, to um, basically have this mindset of me versus them, right? So like they, the Japanese, me, the foreigner, or something like that. So, and I wonder how can this also be overcome? Because for some people it never happens, right? It continues in their minds to the point that eventually they just return home and do not appreciate all the good stuff that Japan can offer.
Yeah, what do you do about it?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And of course, I know, Tim, that we talk about this quite often, that it takes a certain type of personality to be here and to be successful here, to find friends here and everything. But at the same time, I believe that there are also some other factors. Is it just the personality? Is it something else? Is it that you get lucky and you meet people who are open and who embrace you and let you in their
Luck is part of it.
Mm.
Part of it is luck.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but for me, it was as soon as I started making friends, everything changed. And we used to host, what do you call it? Stoko, the kids who didn't want to go to school when we lived in Hawaii. And we just paired them up with kids in a local charter school. And we didn't even care if they learned English. We just make some friends, play basketball, do this stuff. Many of these kids ended up becoming very good English speakers because they made friends and they wanted to talk to them. That was their motivation. So I get the feeling that interactions, somebody to like Makiko, like Maya, like me, someone who can manage engagements, kind of like a starter kit to hook them up with people so they make genuine friends. To me, that needs to be done. And maybe there's other fancy ways and educational ways to do it, but I think it starts with human to human
Mm.
contact.
Mm. I mean, fully second to that. I mean, so we need connections, whether you're just, in your own country or intercultural setting, or intercultural setting, which is more challenging. But so everyone needs connection. But to build a good connection, you have to be a good human. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, you want to be a good human, have a good sense of humor, be nice to people,
Yeah.
be polite, don't bully people, don't do gaslight people, you know,
Humility is nice.
yes,
Humility helps. Little
humility helps, and humble, and again patient, don't get upset quickly, don't take it personally, and just laugh. For there are a lot of failures and mistakes, and they are gold. I mean, that all the failures, I don't know how, more than I can count, right? There are a lot of
Right.
investment failures and setbacks, but those moments really helped to grow me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, just get over it, laugh it.
Yeah.
I
Don't
joke.
take yourself so seriously is what you're
So
saying,
I
right?
Right.
give you a case, and when I first traveled to France to meet my mother-in-law at that time, and my husband said, "Oh, go kiss her." Oh, what I do? So easy, like which side I should go, right? Then I ended up kissing her lips. I was red. I was so embarrassed. Right, I told everyone,
Right.
yeah, just don't
No,
say.
that's, yeah, it's fascinating, really. But yeah, maybe developing, and before we even start talking about intercultural communication, we have to talk just about developing communication skills, right?
Yes,
On a very, very basic human level. But as you said, Makiko, I really love that, being a good human being.
You have to.
yes,
Yeah,
You have to.
yeah.
You know?
And of course, for different people, it has different meanings. But
Yeah.
in general, just, yeah, be accepting. I think it's also nice to esteem, as you said, don't take yourself too seriously. But I think that also it takes a little bit of time, to get over ourselves, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, the self is, I think when we are young, especially, the self is very strong, right? The ego is very strong, very powerful. So it takes a little bit of experience, life experience, and I think a couple or several mistakes until we develop the ability to not take ourselves too seriously.
You have to. It's a defense mechanism. It's inevitable. You're going to do dumb stuff,
yes.
and some people less than others, more than others. But to me, yeah, 10 years, last 10 years, I've started on the path of not taking myself so seriously. And you know what? It's liberating.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism
Yeah. And
against
can I
pain.
add something? Yeah, can I add something? And one thing I learned when I first went to Canada, fresh out of high school, I went to Canada, and I was thinking I need to make hundreds of Canadian friends. I tried to be nice, I tried to make friends, but then I was so stressed out because not many people, were not, can I say, nice enough to make friends with me. Then I learned is that you don't have to get along with everyone, and that's totally normal, right? And some people just don't click with you. So
Right.
it's not about nationality or age or gender. It's about how you feel when you're with them.
Hmm.
So it's okay to not to like everyone. So find people who make you feel safe, respected, and feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I didn't pay much attention to it, but it's really energy. And sometimes the energy just, the energy of the other person does not go well with yours, or they do not match, right?
Mm.
And of course, there are different expressions of that. As you said, you don't feel comfortable, or you feel disrespected, or there are other things as well. So yeah, find your own people.
I think so.
Yeah,
So you have
yeah,
to,
people have to
yeah, go ahead,
resonate. They have to resonate
Yeah.
with you.
for
And
sure.
and the older you get, the less time you have in life. And so every moment becomes more valuable. And it's increasing in value every minute that's ticking away.
Mm.
And in my case, I only want to talk to people and give time to people who are quality people who, like you said, they make me feel good. I enjoy being around them. And so I don't need a lot of friends. I just need a few good ones.
Mm.
and I'm happy because I
Yeah.
don't have time for 100 people.
Yeah, fully agree. Yeah, so I have three good Canadian friends. We are in touch like for 30 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
they sometimes visit me in Japan and so on. So that's really, yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's like I think don't reject people, but be accepting, open-minded, but you don't have to everyone. That's why you have to.
yeah.
That again, you have to strike a good balance. I think.
Yeah, I think that it's inevitable to meet a lot of people, right? And you have to be polite, you have to be kind, and also try to work with many of them because it's at work, it's outside, in social spaces, public spaces, and so on. But at the same time, the ones that you let really close to your heart, they have to be selected carefully.
Yeah.
So, and
Curated.
curate.
Curate your
You're right.
friends.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, by talking about this once again, I think that none of us here is trying to say, just choose your friends at the first, during the first 10 or 15 minutes, after you meet them. No, but just try to find, those people who you resonate with or who resonate with you. So, and just I think it's important to be intentional about this too, without being rude, of course, and be exclusive and, just offensive.
Yeah. And I don't, I think it's funny when we have to all love each other. I think love is too much of an ask. I would be very happy if we just all tolerated each other. First, let's do that. Maybe we can
Well,
work our way
uh,
up to love
Yeah,
one
step
day,
by
but
step. Yeah.
or
start
maybe,
at the
yeah.
bottom
May I say
with
something?
tolerate,
Yeah, maybe before we start tolerating each other, maybe just try to understand why the other person is saying what they are saying.
It might help us
Where,
tolerate each other more.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that might help us tolerate each other more because nowadays we just have lost the ability to see nuance and to hear what the other people are saying, right? And it's so difficult because it looks like for most people the world is just black and white, and it's so scary. It's terrible. It's divisive. It's counterproductive. It's, I mean, all the bad terms you can come up with. It
That's
is.
why we need more of these long conversations.
Hmm.
That's where nuance comes out,
Mm,
where you have people talking,
Yeah.
discussing, right?
mm.
So we don't have enough of that. The social media is too, it contributes so much to that dehumanization, and there's no room for nuance.
Or
No,
maybe it's not all the social media. It's probably the social media where we only use the written word,
right, right.
right?
Yeah,
Because when you don't hear the voice or when you don't see the face of the person who wrote a certain paragraph or a comment, then it's really easy to misinterpret that, right? Because we don't know where those people were sitting, what they were thinking, and everything else. And so we just interpret the given comment from our own perspective. And unfortunately, most of the time we're conditioned to how can I say, to misinterpret this, right? Because we think that people are trying to attack us or to say something bad about us, which most of the time is not true, I would say. But we don't know that. Our brain actually works to protect us, and so it goes on alert if we perceive that something is kind of offensive, or we think that the other person is trying to attack us.
yeah. So, Makiko, I just want to change it a little bit, the direction, but one of the things that I admire about you is you started out in the real world,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
You were a Gemba person, right? So was
Yes.
I,
Very
right?
Gemba.
Very
And
good.
I really think that there's different ways you can go. You can start off in academia and stay there, and there's a lot of good research done, but sometimes it's done without the context of nuance in the real world, right?
Mm, mm,
Or you can start off in the real world and then move into that, and you can connect the dots, I think,
mm, mm,
better than someone who just lived in academia their
mm,
entire career.
Mm.
So in a sense, you are, and this is what I kind of did. You're translating academic research and all the jargon that comes with it into plain language that
Yes.
people who
So that
need it, but they
yes.
aren't psychologists and they aren't anthropologists, but they need that information more than anybody else
Mm.
because they're dealing with it, right? And that's what I did. I took anthropology speak and translated it into stories and simple explanations so that factory workers could relate to it.
Yeah, they can relate. Yes.
And I feel like it, I feel that in your posts as well. You're not you're not overly heavy on the jargon. You have a very good way of communicating. So how do you think, like, how do you view your experience in relation to what you're doing? How valuable was it?
I'm really happy that you see this because this is what I'm trying to aim at. Is, like you said, I've been in automotive industry. I've been a program manager. Every time there was a trial, I've been to making, prototypes, and I was at Gemba factory, helping making, tanks and so on. And also that's why I believe in tangible things and real experiences. I don't like people who are just sitting at the computer and giving orders. No, I
Right,
go to that,
right.
see people, talk with people, see
Gemba
myself.
Shugi. That's you.
Yeah, there's a game, Genjitsu, Genbutsu, Genjitsu, Genba. Yeah, so there are
Yeah,
three. Yeah, three. Sangen Shugi. And that actually still applies in my work as well. When I coach, I don't impose theories. No, I understand whenever there's some knowledge could help, and I bring in, but I don't tell terms, but I translate it into something understandable.
right.
Examples, make them think, so that they
Or
can
these
also,
anecdotes. Right, right.
yes. That's why I don't impose theories. I do a lot of trainings and so on. You'll be surprised at how little I introduce psychological terms. The
Right.
psychological theories are everywhere, but they're hidden because they don't have to memorize the term. What is important? They understand the guts of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people will forget all that stuff. They remember your stories though.
Yeah.
And the lessons, if you can tie it to a lesson, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we need more of that. That I think that's an important niche to fill. To be that you're translating in a way.
Yes,
that,
that's
for
right.
Yeah.
regular people,
So,
right? Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to.
Wow.
Yeah, we have way too much jargon in every single area or industry.
And some people just use it just to sound professional. That I hate that. No.
Impress.
Yeah.
To impress. Yeah, they're signaling their intelligence to us with their big words, right? I'm more like Einstein says, you should be able to, if you really understand something, you should be able to put it in really simple terms.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing. It's not exactly what he said, but
Exactly.
so that's a valuable service, so you mentioned not being annoyed with each other. It's funny. I always say, like, couples, if they tell you they don't fight, they're lying or they have a bad marriage, because it means one of the two is holding everything in. And I think you got to learn how to have your little quarrels. That's part of the communication process, right? And the more you do it, the more you resolve it, or you don't, and you go opposite ways, right? So my wife and I, we still annoy each other sometimes, but we get along, like,
That's
Yeah,
and when we have a tiff, it's not a big deal. It's always really stupid stuff, usually me saying something stupid. But, and I wrote about this once, but this is just a funny thing. My wife rarely gets mad at me. Rarely. I try to keep her happy, but when she gets mad, and it doesn't happen often, out comes the vacuum cleaner. She doesn't say anything. She just starts cleaning, and she's banging the vacuum cleaner against the wall, and this only happened a couple times in 41 years. So, and I was always tempted to say, "Honey, you're doing a good job," but I didn't want to. I would have been in big trouble. I knew she was mad at me, so I had to.
Yeah. Well, Tim, when I mentioned that, I I meant not couples. I meant people in social situations and settings.
But it
But
happens with couples too.
it does, it does.
It
But
does,
with
yeah.
with
It does.
couples,
It
you can
happens with
learn.
couples. We annoy
Yes,
each other. That's normal. Get used to it. That's
yeah. What I
all
want to
humans
say is
annoy each other. Friends too.
they do. But when you're a couple, right, and you trust each other, you can actually get annoyed with each other and
You're
express
right.
that annoyment, right? So because you trust each other to find a way out of that argument. But it doesn't happen. It's not always the case with your colleagues, for example,
Right.
right?
Right. 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 Right.
So, and sometimes you inevitably get annoyed with colleagues. It
Right.
happens, or maybe with your boss. So what can we do when that happens, right? Because
Yeah.
we cannot just go full force, and say, "What are you thinking?" I just cannot imagine and cannot believe that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think so. Everyone needs an education how to communicate, like assertive communication, how to respect your opinion as well as the other and say it nicely. And everyone has to be trained on that. And also, leader has to lead by example, how to treat
Mhm.
people, and also have to create. It's not just one night, thing, but you have to create the team culture where everyone is encouraged to say anything as long as you don't attack or
Right.
attack someone's dignity. It's okay to say things that not necessarily agree with majority of
Right.
opinion.
Right. Right.
I think you have to. It takes time, but you have to create a culture that everyone is welcome to say anything, and it's okay to say sorry. I'm not comfortable with that.
Hmm.
For that, I think leader has to kind of manage the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we talked about before offline, I, I think it's undervalued in my culture, the soft side of just getting to know people, connecting with them as human beings within a company. Um, because once you win some trust and you make a few allies, I'm talking about a non-Japanese working for a Japanese company, life is a lot easier and you can you know take advantage of these Japanese resources. They're on your side now. They got your back, and they can teach you. You can ask them questions. You can ask them to help you read what's going on below the surface. And like I don't think there's enough emphasis on the importance of that if you want to do well, survive and thrive. In for example, a Japanese company, and and it's not for everyone. It's not
No,
everybody
it's not for everyone.
not
No.
everybody should work for, and even me, to me, it was a learning experience. So I always looked at it like school, and I was going to leave eventually. And they used me. I worked hard, and I learned as much as I could from them. That's how I justified it, right? But I did well because I connected with people, you know, and I think that needs to be emphasized more.
Mm, fully agree.
Yeah, me too. I agree with that. And once again, it comes to basic communication skills. You start from there, building relationships, right? And of course, in Japan, it takes longer to build a long term relationship, but it's so much worth it. So much worth it.
Yeah.
And
And the
yeah,
first step is figure something out, do something kind for that
Yes.
person without them asking.
Mm.
Pay attention. See
Yeah.
what you, even little gestures.
yeah,
And that's all you need to do at first. And keep your promises.
Yes. Keep promises. That's important. Yes.
You know,
yeah,
don't make big promises that you can't keep.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Once you promise, you have to commit.
You have to commit.
yes,
Right.
indeed.
Oh,
That's what I do usually. Yeah, and then for communication wise, it's not just training. It's also I have to change mindset as well
yeah.
because it's one thing, but you have to be convinced. I don't know. You have to really understand in your guts. Oh, that's why
Mm,
it's important. So that's what something is missing in communication training. Why we need that skill? No, how it works. How beneficial it is for your life in terms of professional life as well as private life.
yeah,
Right.
Mm.
Right.
yes,
Well, that's great.
yeah,
Well, this was great. The time flew by.
Yeah, amazing.
I could
Oh my
chat with
goodness.
you ladies forever. This is
Yeah,
always so much fun. I always enjoy it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's continue it at some point of time when we can do it again, the three of us, when our schedules allow. And yeah,
Sure.
I would love to do it.
Yeah,
Continue this
do it.
conversation.
So, Makiko, are you counseling couples? Is that a part of your business? And if so, how?
I I do counseling, but it's I don't take I don't charge for. I'm really
Oh,
doing it on voluntary basis for family
oh,
internal family.
oh, right on. That's very nice of you to do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's my
great.
that's my life work.
And if you're on LinkedIn, connect with Makiko. She has great
Yes.
posts. I read them all. They're very
Me
informative.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to LinkedIn, it's all academics. It's all like my training, but I try to share
You know,
knowledge.
yeah, all the posts I have read so far, they resonate with me. I love also the pictures that you include in the posts. They're so very sweet and very telling as well. So thank you very much for that too, because it's work. Writing those posts is also work.
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah. You're
time, it
very
takes
thoughtful.
energy, very thoughtful, yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, and I'll continue following you.
Thank you.
And
Me too. Hmm. I
yeah,
really
And
enjoy
and
your post
hopefully I'll be
post
seeing you two ladies in
in
Atamis.
person.
in a
Yeah,
time, yes,
we will.
Come
Definitely
enjoy
in
our
September
onsen.
or October.
Then we'll
Yes.
have a glass of wine later.
right,
Yes.
All
yes.
right. All
With
right.
pizza.
Okay. All right. So to everybody who watched us, thanks a lot for
Thank
this
you.
this 1 hour and 2 minutes of your time of your day today. It's great to have had you with us, and please be with us again next week. Now it's time for a shout out for our sponsors. That is Kanachu and Hause.
Get ready for the music.
Yes.